And so this is the Thursday, October 31st, Food Ontology Curation meeting. And this is the second one this fall. And we're just going to try to do a round robin of what issues people have that they want to work on. Following last week, we already defined lots of people, but Cameron McRae, you're new to our to the curation meeting. So if you could just give us a little summary of the project you're working on and how FoodOn will probably be engaged, that would be welcome.
Sure. Okay. Well, hi everyone. My name's Cameron. I just joined SFU as a postdoc working with Damien and the group. I was at McGill previously, where I was working on a PhD in marketing. So for the project related to FoodOn, I am working with a fairly large data set from a grocery retailer in Quebec, from their loyalty program. So it's more kind of on the consumer side of things, looking at consumer behavior. But obviously, the products that are sold in these stores are food products, among others. And the idea is to use FoodOn to basically link to the data set and kind of go from there to look at different behavioral, I guess, types of projects.
Yeah, and Sarah, there's commonalities there. Sarah's with the periodic table of food initiative and is categorizing samples, food samples coming in for nutritional analysis according to FoodOn food classes, but also we're looking at the bag of terms, the characteristics that are important that FoodOn needs to cover in the sample names. So Cameron's shown me his database of food products and then the actual consumer bills as they go shopping. Having bought every single, each product has a line item that they bought. So his mission is also, if you want to just mention a little bit about the alcohol, um, vegetables, the kind of desire to segment your consumer population into groups, that might be a crossover point too.
Sure. Yeah, this is another, I guess so far my projects have been kind of using this data set, not with the ontology, related to different sustainability, I guess issues like, for example, looking at how people are shopping for animal-based versus plant-based protein products in grocery stores. So kind of continuing that work and branching out a little bit, I was thinking about a newer project looking at addictive behaviors in this data set, which, because the data is from Quebec, quite a few people buy alcohol from these grocery stores like beer, wine, ciders, and that sort of thing, as well as cigarettes or tobacco products, gambling products like lottery tickets, and then certain food categories that might be considered more addictive because they're high in sugar, high in fat, or high in salt type of thing. So the idea is to kind of use these different categories to segment consumers into basically probably kind of like the average group, and then some that are probably have higher spending in one or multiple of these categories.
Yeah. And Handy, was that a hand up or was that
It
okay?
was it was a hand up. I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out how to make my hand up more properly. But I was
That's good. That's good.
and I have I think a non-food related question about this. Because I think when you talk about behavior and modeling through that, I was wondering if you were able to pick another ontology to model behavior and social vocabulary around that. Do you have a preference, or are you guys building something?
No, we didn't use an ontology at all. We were just using, well, because it was from more of a marketing angle, we were just using kind of marketing terms like, and looking at things like pricing or some of the different types of promotions that the retailer had run, but not using a specific vocabulary or ontology.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so coming out of this, I was encouraging Cameron, like Cameron gets to say what he's doing in his postdoc work, and it's in the formative stages, but it looks like a great opportunity to add an ontology component possibly to the BC behavior change intervention ontology folks base around these marketing techniques, interventions onto behavior.
So this is something that you guys are building?
I was telling him, and he gets to say whether he's interested in building it.
Yeah.
I was telling him there'll probably be like a year or so of taking a look at this database and offering his expertise on the marketing side to get a feel for how the ontology terms might help, especially with the segmented users, or you might be able to develop it anyway, independently of this data work.
Yeah, we'll be very interested in helping out with that. We have a couple of projects that is looking into similar stuff. So
okay.
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So, right. And then the other thing that I was hitting Cameron up with, although we haven't really talked through it, is helping out with on the FoodOn side with Kai Bloomberg's minimum information food composition LinkML standard. So I think I am going to put that on his file to go scan through the MIFC work that Kai has done so far, and then start as a side project the mapping to FoodOn terms. So that'll be Cameron's assignment to get familiar with other parts of FoodOn. Okay, anyone else want to bring to the floor what they need? Sarah, I'm looking last week at what people were talking about, what they wanted out of FoodOn in the next year, but I actually don't see your name down there. Did we cover your needs, or you were there last week? I can't remember.
Yeah, I was, but I joined pretty late, kind of like splitting time between meetings. So I guess just a couple of things. Hi, Handy and Cameron. Nice to meet y'all. Wheat, we have like a ton of wheat varieties that we haven't contributed. So that might be of interest to Handy and Cameron. Complex foods, ultra processed foods are things that we've got in our database, but haven't really worked around, like, or I guess like multi-ingredient foods, how we might want to address that. So there could be some like linkages there also. I think for at least me personally, Damien, I had mentioned on the call last time about interest in like the food characteristics paper, like continuing to work on that. And then like organizationally or decision wise, I think we've made kind of an internal decision about where we want to go with the pre-composed versus post-composed terms. We've really built out our database on pretty specific pre-composed terms. But it seems like that's not sustainable and also not maybe in line with the direction that y'all are headed. So we're making the internal decision to just scale back and kind of curate to the more generic term. And then for now, just using our internal bank of food processing terms. Sorry, the sun's like right in my face. Not for long. Daylight savings is coming. So yeah, and then just kind of like syncing up with you all, or also with Kai's minimum information checklist to expand on like food quality terms for like cooked foods.
Okay. Which lines up with the food characteristics paper. Okay.
Oh, I guess I could also do an introduction. Yeah, so I'm Sarah Brinkley, postdoc at the Biodiversity SIA Alliance, working on the Periodic Table of Food Initiative, which is like a global public database of ambitious goal of analyzing a food omics approach of all the world's edible biodiversity. Right now, we've got like 500 foods that we launched with in April, and probably in the next year on target to have about 1,500 foods with our global partners in about 10 countries. Also, a unique challenge that we're up against right now is synonyms and local languages for foods. And so I think we'd also like to contribute a number of synonyms in Thai, Spanish, maybe Quechua as well. So that's kind of on the horizon for us.
Petrua, is that Indian or?
Yeah, native Peru.
Okay.
Well, I guess kind of Peru, Bolivia, Andes.
Yeah, I'm misspelling that, but anyway. Andes.
Oh, yeah, I'm not even looking at it in the notes.
All right. So I'm adding that to the notes a little bit. Okay. All right. Well, that speaks to an ambitious desire by FoodOn to move all of our synonymy that we control over to a SSSOM file format for inclusion in the ontology, to have it like worked on separately from the OWL file. Anyway. Okay. Great. Thanks, Sarah. All right. So I don't have any agenda on my side of the fence. Does anyone else want to have us spend some time on their stuff this morning? In this new model, people can sort of figure out what their file is, and then we'll all draw our attention to that, and I will offer as much training stuff towards that as I can. Let me just say, Anusha, you've been making all sorts of little comments and so on to the seafood table.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of those issues are primed for feedback from the group here, or whether we save that for more systematic.
Yeah, I mean, I am currently adding all the existing food on seafood terms. I used Sparkle Query to first fetch all the fish food product branch and all the I can't remember exactly. I think it was more for invertebrates. And now I have a list of all existing food on terms related to any kind of seafood other than the processed one. I've filtered those. Um, uh, Now I am just mapping on the first pass. I'm mapping FDA species because that has been more straightforward since they generally have tags on IDs, which makes it easier to add them to the template. However, there are many species at the same time which are without taxon IDs in FoodOn, and they appear to be probably the variation of those species. So I'm just researching these cases further and adding the comments that this is something which I have to double check, and this is something which I have to look more into. So yeah, and just using the FoodOn IDs where possible. So there's still a lot which I can handle on my own for the first pass, but I'm just noting any issue separately so I can spare some time to double check those things more and then to discuss later.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Anusha, if you need help figuring out if a taxon name is a synonymy or anything, like send it my way. Because that's mostly what I've been doing with the seafood list is sorting out the taxonomy changes. So I may already have them or know them.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask Amanda if you have some time to give us in that department. So
yes, happy to help with that.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
let's make the seafood file. The seafood file is yours, Nusha. But
Yeah.
let's make it a one-step consult with Amanda, and then anything that survives past that, we can bring to
Right.
for awareness.
Would you be able to access the Google Sheet, Amanda? I'm not sure because I think
No,
that
I
was a permitted
cannot.
web. Okay,
Yeah,
right. So I
no,
will
they still
separately.
block those.
Okay, okay, no worries. I'll separately send you the list where I feel like it would be great to have your help there.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
because it was very straightforward for animals because of the limited species and the taxons are very clear in many cases. But for seafood, it's like over 1,000 terms with or maybe more.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
it's and we keep adding taxa or updating, so I can probably update a lot of those and probably even give
okay,
you references to trace back so that we know who's actually was who.
okay, right. Yeah, that would be really great. That would be super helpful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then just in terms of the process of editing and revising FoodOn, we've been creating these robot tables, and then they add basically new organisms in, and then as well they're just simply organizing the existing content in FoodOn, the existing labels and term definitions. We try to catch as many existing entries in the FoodOn products hierarchy, for example, to move them over to this new seafood list. But that ends up being so far that we ended up with a bunch of duplicate definitions and sometimes labels, because the same content is still sitting, or a variation thereof is sitting in one of the existing ontologies still. It hasn't been manually deleted. So I'll give a little bit of a tutorial about that coming up, about the kind of queries we need to set up to delete the existing duplicate content. Luckily, a lot of that duplicate content is removed if it's exactly the same on the merging the build cycle of FoodOn, so that even if there are two labels entries, one in the food products import file and one in the new seafood list, that the food products import file, the two labels will be merged into one for public exposure. The only case where duplicate information is showing up right now is where we've added a period or slightly tweaked the definition. And then you'll see for a food category, you'll see that extra annotation on there. So that takes a bit more of a manual review to know whether we're deleting something that's just superfluous duplicate, or if there's actually a comment that we added to the record on the original FoodOn content side that should be preserved, even though the record as a whole has been moved over to the seafood or plant or animal template.
Yeah, and also I think many categories are like in conjunction. Like suppose some of the upper classes are like Atlantic salmon and trout food product. I'm not sure why actually FoodOn created that. Maybe it just came from Langwell at that time.
Oh, right.
But there isn't really.
Right. Okay. So note about the conjunction, the disjunctions, the orings of terms. All those oring or anding terms date to Langwell that we based FoodOn on. And so basically we want to hollow those out, just offer them for history's sake, but make sure that the disjunction Atlantic salmon and trout have become trout and Atlantic salmon as two separate classes that then have their own subordinate classes. So often there may be a Langwell code associated with Atlantic salmon and trout, and Langwell will have said Atlantic salmon and trout, will have done the slight adjustment to say Atlantic salmon or trout to be a little bit more owl friendly, to convey that the class isn't some kind of genetic merger of the two. And then, but that's as far as we went often with those But then there can also be the case where they've actually created that category because it's a common language blurring of categories. So you've waded into one of the most complicated naming things. So I'm so happy Amanda's here to help you out with that. Okay. Lean and mean FoodOn curation meetings. Does anyone else have an issue to bring forward? What if they don't? What we can do is adjourn till 2 weeks from now, and what we can also do probably is throttle this such that if we start getting so many issues that people's businesses left undone, possibly moving to a weekly session, shorter session, but weekly session. Okay. Counting 3, 2, 1, last call. All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks then. Okay.
That's good. Nice
Thank
seeing
you.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
All
Thank
right.
you. See you.
Yeah. Bye.